Hello, and welcome to our on-demand webinar, Map It Out, the Path to Better Engagement with Prospective Students. My name is Daniela Norden. I'm a Director of Web Strategy at Carnegie, the leader and innovator in higher education marketing and enrollment strategy. We offer groundbreaking services in the areas of research strategy, digital marketing, lead generation, slate optimization, student search, and website development and creative. As a strategist, my role is to identify, prioritize, synthesize our clients' website redesign goals and ensure the strategic direction of all of our website redesign projects. I've worked in digital engagement, social media marketing, online fundraising, and digital marketing for more than a decade, and I got my start as part of the marketing and communications team at Skidmore College in upstate New York before I came to Carnegie. But today, our goal is to introduce you to an important tool, the experience map, that can have a major impact on how it can positively impact your communications and enrollment strategy. We'll do that by sharing an experience maps 101, what it is, what does it look like, what information is included. We'll talk about the different ways that it can improve the processes you have in place, and then we'll talk about the benefits of the map and how you can use it. So let's go ahead and get started. What is an experience map? The easiest way to say this is that an experience map is a way to visualize the customer journey, but we really like this definition that experience mapping is the strategic process of capturing and communicating complex customer interactions. Why is this important in higher ed? When we talk about customer interactions, what we're really talking about are all the thoughts, feelings, emotions that go into making a decision. In our case, that decision is choosing a college to apply to, when to apply, and how to make that decision to enroll and accept. So what does this look like for any college or university? First, let's take a step back and talk about the intersection of how higher ed marketing professionals should use and view an experience map. At Carnegie, we look at the path a prospective student takes to enrolling at an institution as a complex sale. A complex sale is a highly emotional decision. So think about buying a house, buying a car, or choosing to apply to college. There are a number of reasons and criteria that go into these, complex decision-making processes, whether it's price or location, but really at the end of the day, the home you choose, the car you choose, the college you choose to attend is really more about this feeling, this vibe that you get, right? So on one side here, a student is moving through this complex sale. On the other side is your content strategy or your vision for the content that you'll create, what you want the content to do, and who it's for. So to maximize digital engagement, your content needs to reach your audience at the right point of this complex sale. So this meeting place where your audiences are interacting with your content, that's the user journey. And an experience map helps us visualize these ideas. So the complex sale can be divided into 4 phases, and the 4 phases, we'll break these down as we move through the map in a couple of minutes, but I'll just identify them here. The first phase is understand and explore. The second phase is narrow choices and apply. The third is decide and accept. And the fourth is commit and transition. And as students move through these phases, an experience map allows us to dive deep into the thoughts, the feelings, the actions, and the opportunities within each phase. So what we do is we capture and document all of those, thoughts and feelings and opportunities that students are going through. And once we have them documented, we can craft the messages and look for digital content opportunities that directly answer the questions and concerns, honestly, that prospective students have. So what does this look like? This is a nice screenshot of a prospective student starter experience map, and this is available for download. I'll share it at the end. I'll share a link to it at the end of the session. But what you're seeing is basically a sample of an experience map that we work with our clients on. This particular map represents our consolidated findings from about 2 decades of research and our work with over 350 institutions, from large private institutions to from large public institutions and large private institutions to small private institutions, liberal arts, public, arts colleges, community colleges, and everything in between. So while this map captures at a high level the prospective student journey for all of these institutions, I want to point out that this map is really just a starting point, and it should be customized for your institution and for your audiences. And there are a number of different ways to do that. One example is we worked with the University of Montreal to focus on an international student journey, for example. We've worked with the Mendoza College of Business at Notre Dame to create experience map that focus on prospective business students. But today we're going to look at this one map that captures probably what's most common to most prospective students. So let's go through what you're seeing at the map from top to bottom and give you an idea of what you're looking at here. At the top, you'll see the 4 phases that I just mentioned: the understand and explore, narrow choices and apply, decide and accept, and then the commit and transition. Moving down the map, you'll see that we've captured the thoughts, feelings, and actions through each of these phases, and you can see how they change across each phase. As we continue down the map, you'll see the opportunities. So down here at the bottom, this is where you get to decide and see what opportunities that you really want to capture. You can use it to plan for key messages that you want to communicate, or maybe there are specific content ideas for your website that you've identified. We'll look at some specific ideas a little bit later, but first let's dig into each of those phases so that you get a better sense of how this experience maps work. We'll start with the first phase, understand and explore. So in this phase is when students are really thrust into the world of exploring colleges. What kind of institutions are out there? What do I want to major in? What types of majors are there even? Students in this phase are thinking about, how do I narrow down this criteria and how do I make a choice? What do I need to know? And this is a complex process. There's apprehension, but there's also excitement. And there's some really great opportunities right off the bat for you as an institution. This is a really good time to pay attention to your brand. How are you expressing what's different about you as an institution in a way that captures students' attention? And this could be in the marketing materials that you're putting out. This could be what you're mailing to students. This could be what's on your college fair tables. If you're talking to juniors or if you're talking to rising seniors, what are the questions you're hearing and what are the ways that you're answering those questions? It's a good place to start building the case for value and affordability. We know off the top that that's one of the questions you're going to get asked, so be prepared for it and anticipate it. Some students might be narrowing their choices right away based off cost or perceived cost, right? Because we know that's a very real thing. So this is a great opportunity to put out there on your website or in your view book or marketing materials. If you're looking at our tuition, you may see this number, but actually it's an incredibly affordable journey for you to take. And here are the ways that you can explore that for your institution. But students are taking in a lot of information in this phase, and it's really, you really need to be thinking about what are the places that you can promote what makes you different and what kind of programs you have, since these are often sort of the front door questions and the way that students are walking into the front door of your institution. Next, as they start to whittle down their list and start thinking about which institution might be right for them, this is when students are going to start to compare institution to institution, and they're going to start thinking about how they're going to narrow those choices and apply to that college or university, right? So as students think more about things like cost or residential life or student life or study abroad opportunities, a little more specific than just, can I afford this or what is a major? They want to get a sense of, what makes this college stand apart and why do I want to add them to my list? So excitement's starting to build, right? Students get a sense of, yes, this is the right place for me. Maybe this is when they're visiting campus and getting a really good feeling of, oh, this feels like it could be my home, right? There's a lot of empowerment, and depending on the role that parents play, because we know influencers and parents and families are an important part of this journey, right? Sometimes parents are a little more involved than others, and sometimes students are feeling more empowered to take this journey on themselves and feeling really great about asking the right questions, and being in charge of the process that really determines their future. But there's a lot of fear around this too. So there's this constant question of, is this right? Is this a commitment I need to make for 4 years? What if I make the wrong decision? What is that going to look like? What are the consequences of that? How do I get out of, making a bad decision? How do I know this is the right decision? So there's a mix of different kind of emotions at play here in this stage, and in others, but really this is sort of becoming, tangible for the students. So this is a good time to address any misconceptions that are out there. I have a former colleague who likes to tell a story from her time as admissions officer that there was this misconception that her institution had a dress code, and they have no idea how this rumor started. There was no dress code. And so a lot of times they would say, hey, here are some myths, and here are some myths that are busted because we don't have a dress code here. And while you may be hearing that, it's not true. What other misconceptions about your institution are out there? How can you debunk those? And how can you demystify some process questions? Well, the application process is wrought with fear and anxiety, right? Financial aid, any of those residential life, housing applications. How can you focus your content and presentation that helps support the student journey? And it's really just important to be aware of some of the apprehension that students are having at this phase and help them move through it in a way that, reduces friction and anticipates and answers their questions. So they've narrowed their choices down. They've decided to apply to you. They're completing applications and they're waiting and waiting and waiting. We move into the decide and accept phase. In this phase, you should really pay attention to what students are thinking and feeling as they wait to hear back from you. They're waiting, they're thinking, what's it going to be like at this institution? Who am I going to meet? What clubs can I join? What if I'm making the wrong choice? As I'm waiting for these institutions to decide, do they want me? What does that mean to be a part of this community? And how do I make this choice? So there's that mix of anxiety and thrill as they await these decisions. And I want to iterate here that this is an important time for institutions to be aware of the content that you're putting out there. This stage of the game and making sure you're thinking about the fact that students are waiting and staring at their inbox. Be thoughtful about the things that are going out and the kinds of communications that are going out that can cause frustration, right, for these students as they're waiting for those received decisions and as they go through the financial aid process, which can induce anxiety in a lot of us. So being sensitive to that mixture of excitement and frustration and being aware of the content that you're producing and understanding what those points of frustration, confusion, and concern are. This is also a time when students are visiting and attending your admitted student events, right? So at this stage, the feelings that you're seeing captured on this slide and some of the details that you would find doing this kind of work are going to help you figure out what sessions make sense for admitted student needs or what kind of content you should be putting up on your social media channels around admitted students and answering their questions, helping them reaffirm that this is the right place for them, and helping to alleviate and finally get excited about making this decision. Oh, I got into that institution of my dreams. It's time to make that commitment. It's time to transition to that next stage. How in the world do I prepare for this, right? So we want to be sure to help and support them, not to have to battle all of the deadlines, the paperwork, the forum, and really create a sense of relief, when they're moving to these through these different phases. So I want to actually just go back before we talk about that. The last phase here is the commit and transition phase. So because you don't have to wait anymore, because they finally got into the institution that they really wanted to, it's time to make that commitment. It's time to transition over to that next stage. So in this phase, students are really thinking, how in the world do I prepare for this? How do I know what next steps I need to take? How do I know what I'm forgetting? If this is the first time and possibly the only time that I'm going through this journey, how do I know what I'm missing? If I don't know, what if I have no idea what I'm missing? They don't know what they don't know yet, right? So there's a little bit of impatience. I just want to get there. I don't want to do all these forms. I don't want to deal with all these deadlines. I just want to get to campus and make friends and attend great classes. So we need to be making sure that we're focusing on the balance of supporting, hey, here's all the stuff that you need. So don't forget it, because we don't want to be chasing you down. And we don't want to be, calling you and reaching out to the students to say, hey, you can't get into this class until you fill out this form. We're so excited, and we know you're excited too, but we can't move until you've completed those forms or those next steps, and making sure that we're sharing that information in spaces that they expect to look for it, right? So whether that's on your admitted student Facebook group, whether that's on an admitted student page, of your site, what you're doing is needing to be thoughtful about where that information can be found, and making sure that students know to be looking for that information, and it's fair to transition it to them. So it's really just, this is a broad look at the sort of common themes we see in the sections of our experience map, and some of the thoughts and feelings and actions and opportunities that go into those. But a lot of times we get questions about, what does an experience map look like? And sometimes what we'll do is we'll come to your campus and we'll do workshops. And there's some pictures here of workshops. You can see it's highly collaborative, that we've got subject matter experts from across campus. We've got people writing down notes, stickies, putting it up on walls, collaborating, and aggregating information. We can also do these remotely when you've identified the prospective student audience, or maybe the graduate student audience or transfer student audience, anybody that you're really hoping to demystify and understand that student journey is open for an experience map workshop. And we highly recommend. It's a great way to build consensus across campus and across departments, and a great way to really understand what your prospective students are going through. So why do you want to do this? What's the benefit of experience mapping? Why should you do this? So we've got 7 reasons or 7 benefits of an experience map. The first is that the map helps you develop empathy. It helps you get to know your audience on a deeper level, see what they're seeing, understand what they're feeling. This will help you create authentic, meaningful digital experiences that resonate because you're focused on what your audience wants or needs. The second benefit of an experience map is that it's, especially for those workshops that I mentioned that we facilitate, we recommend including key stakeholders and subject matter experts from different departments. And the reason why is because this helps break down silos. So it also helps build a shared understanding of the student journey, so that everybody is looking at your project through the same lens and with the same assumptions. Building on that and the shared understanding of the student journey will also help your organization start to see your content efforts in a user-centered way. It's not uncommon, for example, for institutions to structure their website in a way that matches their internal organization, right? But that is often not intuitive or effective for prospective students. An experience map is one of the ways that can help you get around that. For example, prospective students might not understand how your school or departments are organized. They just want to know whether they have the major that you're looking for, right? So therefore, it's extremely helpful to students to organize content in a way that matches their mental model, and it maintains the focus on the users instead of your internal structure. I would also encourage you to reach out to the people who interact with your key audiences regularly. So maybe that's your admissions team, your student life, your faculty, and maybe even your current students, and capture what they know about the thoughts and feelings of your right fit students. So one of the benefits of a map is being able to collect the institutional knowledge of behaviors and needs for those from those folks. Reason number 5 is to identify areas of improvement. If you're building a map collaboratively, inevitably some or all of the people that working on the map are going to start to see the ways that you can improve your digital content or organize it in a better way. And that's great. That's one of the goals. It's one of the things we want to happen. Use your map to capture these ideas, even if you can't address everything right away. And to that end, the map is a great way to prioritize these efforts. If you've mapped a number of opportunities, group similar ones together and take a step back and see how both the patterns and the outlier, take a step back to see both the patterns and the outliers, and start to categorize them into efforts that are most valuable and critical to address, and maybe start a what's nice to have, and you'll be surprised to see the differences as you're breaking out and grouping that content together. Lastly, if you've done a full experience map workshop, you'll leave with a set of key messages and opportunities that get your team thinking about the kinds of content that helps engage, prospective students. But the goal here is to keep using that map. Refer back to it when you need to evaluate a new idea. Take a look at the priorities that you set and the areas for improvement you identified. And if your institution's priorities change, you can adjust the map accordingly. This is a living, evolving tool that's supposed to change as prospective students' expectations change, and as your institution changes to evolve to meet those expectations. So big picture, we've got the 7 benefits, but big picture, really, the map helps you shift your focus from your institution to your customer, and your customer is really your students here. And really, why is it important and why do you want a student-centered experience? It's because it helps you build an individualized approach for students, one that's more engaging and one that's going to help you create a seamless journey across each of those phases that student is going through. It will help you take a look at the journey in total and assist with your holistic planning efforts across your digital efforts. So you'll be able to look at individual content opportunities and how those play into your larger content strategy and marketing efforts and even your content plan as a whole. And there's really no downside to that, right? So that's why you need a map, and that's what a map is. But how about how to use an experience map, right? Well, you're in luck because I've got 7 ways that you can use your map to build better engagement with your prospective students. But first, I want to talk about what this idea of building engagement really means, right? Here are the qualities that lead to better engagement. First, content that builds engagement must be relevant. It answers what prospective students want to know. Information that builds engagement is timely. It comes at the right time when students are looking for it. Content is consistent and accurate, meaning that you're using the same tone across your different touch points. It means that you're going to be able to find the same information across platforms, whether that's print or the website, or when someone picks up the phone and calls you, that information isn't going to contradict itself in any way. And finally, good content that builds engagement is empathetic. If relevant content speaks to the thoughts prospective students are having, then think of empathetic content as speaking to the feelings that prospective students are having, their hopes, their aspirations, their fears throughout the journey. This content really speaks more to their hearts. So those are ways that you can use content to build engagement, and the right way to create content to build engagement. But what are the different ways that an experience map can help you get there? The first is to use your map to frame your institution's narrative. What's the story you want to tell about your college or university? What are the messages? What's the order that you want to tell the story? Do you want to lead with rankings and reputation, or maybe you want to lead with cost and affordability? There's no right answer there. It's really what works for your institution and what your students are looking for, right? Using a map can help you plan for the order of those messages, and you can see how they ladder up to the larger narrative that you're telling about your institution. Some opportunities here are what we call a homepage story frame and email campaigns. And I'll just dive a little deeper into this idea of a homepage story frame. This is an example that we built for the University of North Dakota. It's a story frame is a text-based outline of page content that uses story elements. So here's a screenshot of what we did for UND. And what we started is, where we started is by writing out, what do we want this page to communicate? And what story elements do we want to include? This isn't a once upon a time story, right? But we do want to incorporate story elements that make it more engaging. And some of those elements can include consistent themes, right? Or one consistent theme, creating a distinct setting and place, and including memorable characters. So your people, your place, the promise that you're going to make as an institution, and what your institution has to offer. So for UND, we learned it was really important to communicate this idea that this is a place where you'll become a leader and you'll be able to make an impact. So you'll see in the design, we used those elements to inform the story that we wanted to tell on the homepage. So words like impact, goals, hard work, make a difference. We're using and combining those story elements to really get that story across on their homepage. The second is to align your touch points. So once you have the narrative that you want to tell as an institution, you can use the map to make sure all of your experience touch points align to tell that story, whether it's the copy in your text and paragraphs on your website, whether it's your print pieces, whether it's a student's in-person experience. You know, we've worked with one institution to bring the feel of being on campus and that campus visit to their homepage. They have exceptionally strong yield for campus who visit. They have exceptionally strong yield for students who visit campus. And as you all know, those last 2 years, it's been tough to do that. So for them, the campus experience was doing a much better job of communicating that friendly, warm, tight-knit community than their website was. So now we're using that tour and we're using elements from that campus tour and that visit experience on the website. We're selecting photography and we're refining the copy so that it aligns with the tone and feeling of a campus visit and tour. Another way that you can use the experience map is to identify your communication gaps. So what you're looking at is a chart from our myth-busting research, and it shows us that while students are interested in different kinds of interactions, admissions and financial aid information early on, professors and instructors towards the end, more than 50% are still looking to communicate with your institution in some way. So their priorities change in different phases in terms of the kind of information students are looking for and who they're looking to communicate with. So looking at the journey as a whole allows for the holistic planning that's essential to this student-centered approach, right? And it's important to remember here that prospective students see one brand, one entity that they're interacting with, that they're not looking at your institution as a collection of offices. They're looking at your institution as a whole. So even if they move from one office to another, they're expecting information that's shared internally and that is cohesive, right? Easier said than done sometimes, huh? The fourth way to use your experience map is to tell more meaningful stories. So we just did a storytelling workshop with one college where we use an experience map as one of our tools to help them find and tell better stories during the admissions process. By focusing in on both the questions and the concerns that their prospective students have, we were able to identify a handful of stories that would be meaningful and relevant to their audiences. So we took the opportunity to tell those stories and speak directly to the phase in that journey on their website. Along with telling better stories, you can put your content, along with telling better stories, where can you put your content and how can you organize it for more impact, right? So this is chart from another chart from our myth-busting research, and you'll see that we asked prospective students, what are the biggest weaknesses on websites, right? The first is that it's difficult to get around the website. And the second was that once they found the content that they were looking for after navigating, it didn't answer their priority questions. So what's interesting about this chart is that that's the dark blue, the students, prospective student questions is the dark blue bar, but the light blue bar is higher ed marketing and communications professionals, their answers. And you'll see that the answers for those top concerns are the same. And so what this tells me is that you all know this is a problem, right? You know this is a problem on websites and on your website in particular. So once we know that this is a top concern, you can begin to address that problem and organize your site structure in a way that gets students the information they need quickly, more intuitively, and more effectively. So one of the areas we see this over and over again is academic program pages. We know from the map that prospective students have questions about your programs. Do they have my major? What will I study in my major? Who will I study with? Who will I learn from? What are some of the experiences I can get? Will I get a job with this? All of those questions are different sides of the same coin, but you know it's a top question and it happens early in the journey. You know that's the number one reason they're coming to your site. So create a clear pathway for that information to that academic program page. How do you do that? Maybe you want to look at the labels you're using. Maybe you want to look at how students actually figure out how to get to that program page from the home page. Really high level, what you're trying to figure out are your students' priorities and how to adjust your site structure accordingly. And your experience map can absolutely help with that. Next, you can use the map to help you refine your communication channel mix. This is another chart from our myth-busting research, and it shows channel preference throughout the student journey. You can see how it changes, right? So email starts as more important early on in the journey, and then it takes a dip after they've been accepted, and then other kinds of communications become important. And you can, take a look at this chart, and what we've done sometimes is put it on top of your experience map to align that communication strategy with your student journey. So for instance, we know that social is really important early on. And we know that students don't want to hear from you, direct message, or contact you via social, but we do know that they're looking at social to get a sense for, is this the place for me? Who are the other types of people that go there? Show me the campus, right? So the map can help you plan that entire journey so that you're getting your content to the right students at the right time and in the right place. And then lastly, the map can help you plan for measurement, specifically thinking about that shift from institution to student center. Let's look at measuring the shift from, page views and measuring how students are moving through that prospective journey. So on one side here, you'll see the page view metrics, the number of session pages and session duration, and these are important. You don't want to stop capturing this, but the map helps us move towards student-centric measurements that help us understand how students are moving from one phase to the next throughout their journeys, and that might be starting to and some of the ways that you might be starting to measure are things like your request for information form completions, or event registration for open houses, or maybe you're going to start measuring how many clicks you get to the start application button, right? So it's taking that mindset from measuring what happens on the page and figuring out the key things that tell you how that student is moving through your journey and how your content and your information helps them do that, answering those questions. So those are the 7 ways that you can use the map, but I want to talk more concretely about when is the best time to use your map. We use experience maps at the beginning of a website redesign. And I know I mentioned that a map is a great tool to build consensus, to collaborate with your institutional partners, and to communicate those key priorities. And that can really be helpful when you're taking on a large project like a website redesign, right? And especially when you're in the planning and the strategy phase where that consensus is so important and making sure that people feel like they've been heard and that they have a voice. But you don't necessarily need a website redesign to make this map helpful. If you've got a smaller special project, like maybe you want to start writing feature stories, or you've got a really particular email campaign for prospective students, the map can help you figure out the right messages, and if they're relevant to the right phase that students are in, it can help you look at your messages as a whole. Is there something missing? Is there something we need to emphasize more in these email campaigns or in these feature stories? What are those content gaps? Maps are also incredibly valuable when performing a content audit. Maybe it's spring cleaning time, right? And you want to take a look at your content. Maybe you're auditing before doing a website redesign. Maybe there's a new president and you got to clean up the website. Whatever the reason is, take a look at the map and see if there are any gaps in your content audit. What's missing from your site? What's missing from your view book? What's missing from your college fair tables? What's missing from your virtual or admitted students days or your in-person campus visits? Do you have the content that doesn't support the student journey? Or do you have content that does support the student journey, but it's in the wrong place? So experience maps can really help you reorganize that content when you're doing the content audit. Perhaps the most popular time we see folks using experience maps is when they're planning their editorial calendar. And this makes sense, right? Because an editorial calendar helps you plan meaningful content based on the right time of the year. So use this map to better align those messages accordingly to the specific times of years that you're going to be producing this content or that you need to be distributing this content. And finally, the map can be really helpful when it comes to personalization efforts. So if you're thinking about personalization, or if you already have tried website personalization, the map can really be helpful during these conversations. We know personalization is a strategic lift, right? You really have to think about where it makes sense and how you're going to use it. So take a look at the map and determine at what point in the journey personalization will make a difference to those prospective students so that you can allocate your resources accordingly. Work smarter, not harder, right? And really, that brings us to the overarching function of the map and how it's most useful. Anytime you're creating and distributing content for the prospective student journey, you want to make sure it supports that journey, that it's moving students from one phase to another. So use the map to start asking the questions. How does this support the journey? Will it help students move through the decide and accept phase? How does this content support this experience? So before we wrap up here, I want to share some resources. First, read about how important your website is for prospective students and their parents, how it plays a key role in virtually every aspect of the decision they make regarding college search and choice. In our blog post, Making the Case for Your Website, and there's a link there. Second, if you haven't already, download your starter experience map and begin building empathy for your prospective student journey. They will thank you. And finally, we'd love to find ways to partner to explore the evolving student journey with you through an experience map workshop or a website redesign. So just contact us to learn more and ask any questions that you may have. We love questions. So until the next time, friends, this has been Map It Out, building a path to better engagement with prospective students. Thank you.